Creating custom Pokemon for you! Welcome back, everyone, to the show where we select lucky commenters to spin a series of random wheels that give us factors for a Pokemon that we then create just for you. It's gonna be an awesome episode today, y'all. We're gonna make 3 amazing custom Pokemon as always, so I hope you enjoy. And if you want a custom Pokemon for yourself, let me know in the comments because I'll be randomly selecting people from this video's comments for the next episode. But without further ado, let's get into the first Pokemon. And today's first Pokemon will be for Leo. That's a really good idea. Which Pokemon should we do? But anyways, Leo, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you're going to be a convergent evolution. Which means now we have to spin this wheel to see which generation of Pokemon will be making a convergent for, and it's Gen 3. Which means we'll spin this wheel that has every single Gen 3 Pokemon on it, and we got Spinda. That is definitely one of the stranger Pokemon of all time, especially with the whole, 18 quadrillion patterns it can have. So that's pretty cool. And now let's see what new typing we'll be giving to this convergent Spinda. Your first type is the Poison type. That is very weird for Spinda. And Poison fighting, that is gonna be difficult. And the last step, before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do a Mega Evolution. This is absolutely insane. I'm giving this Pokemon an introduction, but what it really needs is an intervention. The first stage of your Pokemon is Spin Drunk, the Toxincated Pokemon. Just like its Hoenn counterpart, this Pokemon constantly has the spins, but not because it's dizzy or confused or anything, but because of its special diet. As the high competition for food in its habitat has forced Spin Drunk to consume the various poisonous berries found across the forest. And while this does give it access to a source of food that nobody else wants, it also causes it to be constantly delirious and unable to find its footing. But at level 38, it'll evolve into Tipsui. This tipsy titan carries its own special pouch-like tail around like a giant drinking flask. As while Tipsui still suffers from the same tipsy affliction as its pre-evolution, it's now been able to turn that into a strength rather than a weakness, as it now employs a fighting style similar to the Chinese drunken fist fighting style that are designed to throw the opponent off, disguise attacks, and create openings. And while Tipsui isn't exactly pretending, its random off-balance movements are still enough to confuse even the most focused of foes, allowing it to throw looping punches that never look like they're going to land, but always do with extreme physical force. And this is reflected in its signature ability, Tangled Fist, which is similar to Spinda's ability, Tangled Feet, which boosts the Pokemon's evasion when it's confused. However, this version activates when the user is hit by an effect that poisons, which not only is Tipsui immune to being poisoned anyway, but it will also gain a boost to its attack and speed, as the poisonous affliction will give it the toxic intoxication it needs. And when exposed to Tipsite, it'll evolve into Mega Tipsui. We're honestly not sure if this Pokemon can even see, as its hair now completely covers its eyes, but we do know if it can see, it's definitely not seeing straight, as Mega Evolution energy has given this Pokemon a double shot of strength and survivability, to the point where if you're trying to take this Pokemon on, we recommend you do not try to knock it out, but instead just wait for it to pass out on its own. In terms of stats, Mega Tipsui has insane physical attack and its speed is pretty decent, but besides its good HP, its defenses are pretty bad. Meanwhile, regular Tipsui has a similar spread, but with much less insane attack. And for the shiny, I went with this green color as a reference to Slime. But now let's get into the second Pokemon. And today's second Pokemon will be for Pumpkin. What are you eating? And of course, we'll start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. Nothing wrong with that. And now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you got 2, which makes you a full 3-stage evolution line. And now let's see what typing this 3-stage line is going to be. Your first type is the Fire type. That's always an awesome type to work with for sure. And Fire Steel. Those 2 types definitely go very well together. This is going to be cool. And the last step, before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do a signature ability. This next Pokemon is ready to steal the show. The first stage of your Pokemon is Goo Pyro, the Molten Poison Blob Pokemon. This ball of pure primordial goo is completely made of a flowing liquid metal. And while you'd think this would make it super threatening, it's actually not at all on account of being nearly entirely immobile. I mean, the thing doesn't even have legs. In fact, most Goopyro don't make it long at all in the wild, as they're the preferred food of Larava, who gobble them up on sight. But upon reaching level 20, it'll evolve into Belmold. This Pokemon has slowly become more solidified, as by striking its own body against its fellow steel type, it can forge its own frame, eventually building its own armor and simple weapons out of its own body material, making them the preferred partners of weaponsmiths, as they kinda act like an endless source of molten steel. But upon reaching level 33, it'll evolve into Harthermal. Fighting against this Pokemon feels completely unfair, as its molten body only gets stronger and more durable the more times it's hit by direct attacks, meaning the only way to really take it out is to stay at long range and use energy-based attacks, especially if they're water type. As if Harthermal is so much as touched by water, its body will evaporate, leaving nothing left but bits of steel chunks. But it's great for exfoliating, and this is reflected in its signature ability, Forged Frame, which states that every time this Pokemon is hit by a contact move, it will gain a one-stage boost to attack and defense. However, it has the additional effect where if the user is ever hit by a water-type move, even a weak one, it will faint instantly, making it a paradoxically strong Pokemon that can easily take on a Machamp, but would lose instantly to a Squirtle. In terms of stats, Harthermal is a decent mixed attacker, and the rest of its stats are just kind of okay. And for the shiny, I went with this blue color as a reference to water, which is pretty ironic. But now let's get into the third Pokemon. But before we get into the final Pokemon, it's time for the member modifier. This is a segment of the show where we take a fan favorite Pokemon from a previous episode in the series and give it a brand new upgrade. In the last episode, we gave a Mega Evolution to our Fire-type starter Galilidai. So for today's episode, I once again had my channel members vote on which starter Pokemon to give a Mega Evolution to next. And the winner was Codonut, the Water-type starter, which when exposed to Codite would evolve into Mega Codonut, whose astronaut theming has gone even further, as the bubbles on its back have expanded to a giant spaceship. But that's not all. Upon Mega Evolution, it also gains a brand new signature ability called Deep Abyss, an extremely good defensive ability that prevents Codonut from taking damage from the same type of move twice in a row, meaning if the opponent doesn't have a varied enough moveset, Codonut is nearly invincible. Huge thank you to all my channel members, and for the shiny, I went with these green colors as a reference to extraterrestrial aliens. And today's third Pokemon will be for Viper. Your wish is my command. So let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be a Paradox Pokemon. For the last one of the day, that's epic. And it means that now we have to spin this wheel to see which generation of Pokemon will be making a Paradox form for, and it's Gen 3 again. The wheels are really liking Gen 3 today. So let's spin this wheel once again to see which Gen 3 Pokemon we'll be working with, and it's Swallow. You know, for the longest time, I thought that was a Gen 4 Pokemon, but it's definitely Gen 3. Now, every Paradox form keeps at least one of its old types, so we know that it'll stay Poison type, but let's still get a secondary type, and it's Dragon? A Dragon-type Paradox Swalot. This is gonna be strange. And the last step, before you see which Paradox form looks like, let's see if it's a past or future Paradox, and it is a past Paradox. Cool. This is really stretching the definition of what a dragon is. Your Pokemon is Stretchy Scale, the moldable dragon Pokemon. This goofy-looking Drake has complete control over the elastic material that makes up its entire body, and it uses this ability to warp its own shape into whatever the battle demands, like putting more of its body into its wings to soar through the sky, expand its claws to slash foes open, or of course, expand its mouth to crazy dimensions in order to swallow opponents whole. In terms of stats, its ability makes it super versatile, and its stats reflect that, as it's pretty good at everything. And for the shiny, I went with this draconic green color. If you like today's episode, make sure to check out all the other episodes of the custom Pokemon series that can be found in this playlist. As always, huge thank you to all the artists that made today's Pokemon. They can all be found in the description, so make sure to go check them out. And I'll see you all in the next episode, but until then, peace.